We were going to talk about merchant of record, but we thought it might be more fun to talk about alien life forms and how quickly they're moving toward us. Okay, maybe not. I'm Mike Carlos Enderpay. I'm happily on the Hedna board. I'm here with two of my favorite people. I am, to get things started, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, mostly because I usually say Monika's name wrong. But also, to sort of get things moving, why don't we, given we have a break coming up, why don't we share some, what's your favorite dessert? And hopefully it'll be on the dessert bar.
Right. So hi everyone, Monika Singh, VP of Hospitality Payment Solutions with Planet. Ordinarily I would have said Victoria Sponge, but then over lunch I had churros with cream inside. Oh my goodness, I think I'm converted.
Excellent. Well, maybe we'll find you some leftovers.
Absolutely.
Al Ennis with Nuvei, VP of Travel and Mobility. Do I also get to say what my favorite dessert is?
Well, you can say what Monika's favorite dessert is if you prefer.
No, I'm going to go with my own. Cheesecake, any kind, doesn't matter.
Okay.
Not New York, any cheesecake.
Any cheesecake, it's fine. Yep.
Well, mine is oatmeal chocolate chip, not raisin. Raisins do not need to be eaten, even absolutely never. There's no reason for that, and an oatmeal chocolate chip cookie is perfect. So hopefully, can we get the kitchen to work on some oatmeal chocolate chip cookies, please?
And extra churros.
The churros, I'm sure we can find. Yeah. You're on your own with that. Oh, that was loud. I also would like to make a promise to the HeadNet community. I'd love for everyone else to agree with me. Sebastian, are you listening? It's really time for all of us to update our headshots to something that's from the last 8 years. So I'll work on that, I promise. So we've heard a lot about payments. A lot of you were in these sessions yesterday, and I struggle with these chairs because my feet don't touch the floor. One of the things that we really think is important is this discussion about merchant of record and what it means. But I think in order to start, it's really important to understand how unique our industry is. Because of the ownership structure, because of legacy systems and history, this is pretty much the only industry in the world that operates payments the way we do. So when you go to a brand.com site or to an app, you're not paying for something, you're putting your credit card details or payment information, but it's being shipped off to the hotel for processing. And what we've experienced as we've discussed other models and other industries like that, that's very unique and causes a lot of problems for what we do as an industry. And I know you both have worked with other parts of the industry. What sort of aspects of this model confound you and your colleagues?
I mean, just the sheer fact that the experience is completely different depending on the property that you visit, that confounds me. The uniformity that other industries find in the experience, the guest experience, whether that be a guest or just somebody purchasing something online or even at a retail store, is consistent across different locations, and that inconsistency is it's troubling for travelers.
Yeah, I think I would echo that. We see in retail, for example, you can buy online, pick up in store, and you have a consistent experience. I think with hospitality, because the payment's passed on to your property, individual property, I could be in Italy and pay one type of payment option, and then I could be in the UK and not have that payment option. So it becomes quite disparate. There's no consistency, as Al says.
So for people in this room who aren't payment experts, we talk about payments, we talk about fintech, and it's sort of all confusing. And what are some of the real management implications, from a data standpoint, from a fraud standpoint? What do you see as the opportunities for the industry, even exclusive of the guest experience, which we'll get to later?
Well, I think the key point is when you start moving your payments to the individual properties, you don't actually get to see the end data. So if you have a chargeback or if you have a fraud on a transaction, you don't actually get to see it. So you don't know what's happening downstream at your property level. So it might be that a particular card from a particular country is coming in and it's causing high levels of fraud. But as your chain, as your headquarters, you won't know that. So you can't control it. You have no data to back you up and change the way you operate.
Yeah, and aside from fraud, you have no idea if that traveler is actually showing up or if you can better the conversion, right? I mean, there's so much money spent at the top of the funnel to get somebody to book. Actually converting and having the data to make those conversions go through at a higher clip can be very, very powerful and worth millions of dollars, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the discussion yesterday, we talked about, you know, the friction that travelers experience. You know, when you both work with airline and OTA clients, I mean, can you sort of compare and contrast the friction associated with that kind of transaction flow?
Or lack of?
Or lack of it, yeah.
Yes.
You want to start one?
Yeah, sure. I think the key thing here, we touched a lot yesterday on, a lot of people call them alternative payment options, but Mike, myself, Al, we like to call them locally preferred payment options. It gives the guest or the consumer the option to actually buy in a currency or in a payment option that they're familiar with, whether it's Alipay, WeChat if you're from China, or Ideal if you're from the Netherlands. It just makes it much more familiar to them, and therefore when you're doing a checkout, it's so easy. You're not thinking about, oh gosh, I don't really want to use my credit card, is it safe? Or, you know, I'm not quite, you know, happy to use a Visa if I'm from China, I want to use UnionPay or Alipay, WeChat. It reduces that friction, increases conversion, authorization rates, because it's just simpler.
Yeah, about 50% of shoppers will actually leave the page if they don't see their preferred method available to them. So about half would go find that particular item somewhere else. In this case, they'll probably leave a brand.com and they'll go to an OTA.
OTA, yeah. And it's the same with currency, I find, especially in other industries. You know, if you're not offering the local currency, so if I live in London, so if I'm not offered a hotel in Thailand or Hong Kong in GBP, or if I can't convert my funds, I'm actually not familiar with the exchange rate, so I'm not sure what it is I'm paying for. So if I've not got that familiarity, that ease, again, I'll go to an OTA that does.
Well, yeah, and if you look at some of the changes in the market over the past year or two, I mean, the announcement Booking made last summer about moving into fintech status, you know, it seems that a lot of that is driven by this whole desire to create a customer experience, which you've seen with others. I mean, it seems that, you know, the hotels are in need of things like that and guidance. Sorry, I saw a flash of light. I don't know what that was.
The aliens have arrived.
So, you know, one of the things that I think is interesting is some of the new trends in payments. You know, the buy now, pay later. So for those who saw in the video, BNPL, that's buy now, pay later. We have a couple of companies here, Uplift and Affirm, who offer those products. It seems that it's really complicated with the current structure for hotel payments.
Absolutely. I think from looking at where it's come from, it's been hugely successful in retail and other industries where, you know, it's become the norm. Buy now, pay later. You know, buy something, pay in 3 installments. In the hospitality industry, because traditionally hospitality has been either you pre-book or you deposit, buy now, pay later, hasn't really taken off. However, we are seeing increasingly an adoption of that, especially for resort bookings. Families who want to spend that extra bit, but then don't have the upfront funds to do so. But if they can pay in 3 chunks in sort of 3 months' time, they're happy to pay for it, but they're happy to pay a little extra because they know they can spread that cost. But again, if you're not structured, and you can only, say, have it in where the BNPL is in that market because that particular property can support it with their payment provider, and it's not consistent across all your properties in your chain, then it doesn't have the same impact.
So just to follow up on that, when you're looking for booking a hotel room, and if you do want to pay in installments over time, either, just to clarify, the hotel has to be registered into that program, or you have to go to an OTA. At this point, with the structure of brand, that's not
an option.
Okay.
Yeah.
And perhaps Uplift and Affirm can offer during the break can offer guidance on what they're doing, but that's
it was about 2% of the U.S. e-commerce spend last year was on buy now, pay later.
So, thank you. So before we get to a discussion really about what is merchant of record, I just want to lay the groundwork with a couple of use cases. And we're talking about the state of payments, hospitality payments today. So if you look at an example of a Thai hotel, Al, with largely American and European guests. Today, it's a Thai bank. What are the repercussions?
Yeah, so the traveler shows up, and I liked part of the fintech discussion yesterday was currency is actually as a form of payment. When the Thai traveler shows up at a U.S. hotel, they're having to present a credit card, which they may or may not have. And if they do, let's say they get past that barrier, then that card will actually be charged in USD, which causes them or their issuing bank to convert those funds, and they actually end up paying a lot more for that transaction than they expected to when they booked. So it's a very poor user experience for that individual traveler.
And then an example, I think we can all agree that American travelers going to U.S. hotels seem to be the easiest use case. There's nothing cross-border, everything's set up. What about within Europe? What about an Italian hotel with Dutch guests?
Well, if anyone knows the Dutch consumer, they love to pay by bank transfer. So actually we've seen that if you don't offer Ideal, which is a bank transfer local payment option, you're actually losing out on conversion. So if I know my cohort is Dutch consumers, I'll have to offer it. Otherwise, you'll have no conversion, or very reduced conversion, because it's not going to attract your guests and complete the journey. You'd go to a different platform to complete that booking.
Yeah, and the example that many of you have heard me say before, and I'm going to say it again because I think it's really important, because it started a 2-year-long working group within HEDNA, which has led to where we are today with regard to payments. We had a meeting, it was 5 or 6, maybe longer years ago, where I was in a room with people from Marriott and Starwood, so it was before the merger was finalized, Accor and Hilton. And we were talking about Chinese guests. And Chinese guests, going to a Hilton in Beijing or a Marriott in Shanghai, were able to pay with WeChat Pay, Alipay, Union Pay. That same guest going back to the same app or to the same website, going to a Marriott in Washington or a Hilton in London, wasn't able to. And that's led to our discussion about guest-centric payments. And when we talk about guest-centric payments, the biggest challenge that comes up is the topic of merchant of record. And it's almost a reflex for a hotel brand, or had been a reflex for a hotel brand to say, well, we don't want to be merchant of record. And that's why we're having this discussion today. And I think it's important for us as a group to understand what merchant of record means. Merchant of record is a construct created by the card schemes, Visa, MasterCard, JCB's in the room, etc. Merchant of record is not a legal entity. It is not a taxing authority entity. It is a commercial entity. And so one of the things that I think is important is understanding what merchant of record means. And Monica, you've highlighted 4 areas that are covered under merchant of record, and other people I've spoken to have said exactly what that is. So do you want to?
Yeah, I would say there are about 4 key areas you'd have to look at as a merchant of record. You've got to look at the liability as a merchant, what it means to you to become the merchant of record. You've got to look at what's on your balance sheet. So once you've made the acceptance of all those payments, what do you sit on versus what you owed to your properties, the regulatory burden, and then the overall cost to set up as a merchant of record. Those are the sort of 4 key areas I would say are key to sort of understand and look at as a merchant of record.
So as you've spoken to hotel brands about merchant of record, what areas really are the problems with being merchant of record, beyond just an understanding of exactly what's incorporated? I
think there's 2 things. One is the lack of understanding of a merchant of record. I think there is some confusion and some sort of lack of, some kind of lack of clarity. It's not a tax authority issue, it's a scheme or association mandate, and also the perceived risk of a merchant of record. I think we touched on this yesterday, it came up quite a lot. There's an inherent fear of the word merchant of record. But you can break it down. I mean, it's not, Al and I were joking, we could say it's really easy to do. It's not, but it's doable and actually leads to a really nice guest-centric, consistent experience.
So thank you. Al, the hotel brands effectively operate in some capacity the way an OTA or some sort of search engine might work. I mean, how is an OTA able to be merchant of record where a hotel brand might struggle with it?
Yeah, so within the merchant of record construct, there are category codes that are given to different merchant types. 4722 is specifically the one that OTAs use. And what they are the merchant of record for is the booking. So that is the service that they are selling to the traveler, not the actual hotel room or the flight or the car. It's the booking functionality that they're selling. Hotels theoretically could do the same.
So again, and this is all within the card regulations. No one's violating the spirit of an agreement. It's the same kind of business flow.
It's happening every second of every day.
I mean, and I think from an industry standpoint, one of the things that's fascinating is I've been in a conversation with a hotelier and have had a very long discussion about the purpose of the brand.com or brand app. And really a struggle with, is it e-commerce or is it just a booking platform? And to a large extent, the brands have used their direct sales channels as booking platforms, not as e-commerce. I mean, how does that compare with what you see elsewhere?
I would say it doesn't. And as a consumer or a traveler, they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care if you make the distinction between a booking platform and an e-commerce platform. They want it to be consistent, and they're judging you against their preferred way of shopping, which is probably Amazon or some other really easy app to buy things with.
Yeah, and I think as consumers, especially given COVID, the pandemic, and also the sort of acceleration of technology, we've become fickle as consumers. So we want to be able to do quick, easy, convenient payments. And if you put yourself in the shoes of a hotelier, if you just give the booking experience and not a full e-commerce experience, I think you and I are both guilty of this, Mike, where we go on a brand.com and give a fake credit card number, or in my case...
Never done that.
Never. Or in my case, my daughter's library card number. And it means there's revenue leakage, right? If there's a no-show or a late cancellation, what are you going to do with that credit card number that doesn't work, or that library card number? You can't process it. You can't sort of charge the room. So that's lost revenue, that's lost opportunity. But if you flip it as an e-commerce, you can validate the card. You can authenticate the consumer. And consumers are used to it. In fact, they expect it.
Well, and to be fair, I do that just as a way of doing research for my job. I do eventually pay for the room.
I believe you.
But I think it does also bring in the ability to take control of the guest experience, upsell. You're able, the brands can actually benefit from the foreign exchange markup that happens somewhere in the mix.
And you can start profiling your customer. Which
And you can also look at the payment method and try to and use that as a way to identify what the purpose of the trip is.
Exactly.
I mean, back when there was business travel, you could identify based on the credit card bin range whether it was a business card or a personal one, or if somebody's paying with installments, chances are it's a personal trip. So you can upgrade. You can offer upgrades that are different.
Exactly.
Yeah, if they're using buy now, pay later or another payment method, pretty sure that is going to be a personal trip. And you can offer an upgrade, or a bottle of champagne in the room, or something like that, which right now is maybe going to happen at the property, but you can make it happen during the
ahead
booking.
of time. Yeah.
So with regard to this device. I mean, I don't know if everybody has used this to check in or if you're using it as your key, though I would say it only works about 70% of the time as the key. Going forward, this is going to be the customer check-in and payment process. How does that sort of contactless journey even, I mean, do we kind of have to move to centralized payment for this to work?
Well, you do in a way, because imagine you're booking online, right? So you've made a booking online, you've authenticated yourself as a customer, and never having to bring your credit card out again or your payment option again. You can only do that if you centralize, right? If you don't centralize, then you're either at check-in handing in your card, or again, entering your card details if you have an online app. You want to remove that friction. The only way to remove friction and go through that sort of contactless, frictionless journey is to centralize.
Well, it's especially significant with, going back to the example of Chinese guests. Like, there's going to be all sorts of pent-up demand from that market, and when that guest arrives on property, you want them to use the spa, you want them to shop in the store, and that's not currently feasible.
And to be honest, with Alipay, WeChat, we know that there's social media attached to it, there's marketing attached to it, so you can upsell through their own marketing platforms. That won't happen unless you centralize.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about streaming services, we were talking about this at lunch. You don't go to Netflix's website every month and put in your credit card again, do you?
No. I mean, I forget my password, so it's a good thing.
But that's the type of friction that is happening today. And if you take it in a different context and use it in a different industry, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I fly American Airlines a lot, and all I have to remember is my 3-digit CVV code for any booking, and I think we can get to that point as an industry as well. Any last, I can't believe our time is up already, any last words of interest about the merchant of record?
Yeah, I think it's, step away from the fear and put the guest in the middle of the journey. I think you can demystify merchant of record quite easily, whether it's yourself or within a partner that you work with. I think it's almost like a model you have to move to, especially if you want to remain competitive against the OTAs. If you want to move traffic onto brand.com, it's something, most merchants would need to push forward with.
Yeah, I just selfishly would like the experience of not having to take out my
credit
wallet when I arrive at a hotel and just kind of walk to the room, and
That's a good point.
just like that.
Well, with that, thank you, everyone. I believe we have a break now. We'll answer any questions that you might have. We'll be there for the evening event tonight as well. So thanks a lot.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.